Welcome to Pain, Passion, and Purpose. I am your host, Shakita Torres, where I share mental health education, biblical teachings, and tips to help you to heal on purpose so you can walk boldly in your God-given purpose. This podcast is sponsored by Empowered Purpose Academy, a certified online Christian academy where we provide services such as certification for Christian life coaches, mentorship for master's level aspiring and existing Christian therapists, mentorship for Christians, and continued education courses for the body of Christ. You can visit www.empoweredpurposeacademy to learn more and to download your free guide. If you like today's episode, please subscribe and leave us a raving review so that others can tap into the knowledge and wisdom that will be shared on this podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Hey, so before I get started on today's episode, if you have not subscribed to the paid membership of my podcast community, please do. It is going to bless your life. Listen, my episodes are already like therapy/coaching sessions where I give you strategy and insight and all that good stuff. But the community, you're going to get a lot more. You're going to get more resources, more tools, and be able to ask more questions where I can create episodes around your questions, and you will be able to get discounts on some of my products and my events. So what are you waiting for? The price is very affordable. This is for those who are not quite ready to invest in one-on-one coaching with me or into the Pain, Passion, and Purpose mentorship program, which is also low, by the way, but that one is a lot more in depth. You get access to courses, you get access to a Facebook community and all that good stuff. But this is for those who just need to just listen and just gain some tools along the way. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead, subscribe. You won't regret it. It'll bless your life. We'll have topics around mental health and faith, biblical teachings, prayer, boundaries, communication, anxiety, depression, purpose, and so much more. I have had experience in mental health since actually about 2008 when I first finished my bachelor's program. And then from that point all the way up to today and moving forward, I have gained so much knowledge, so much experience, so much wisdom, and I am anointed for it. So go ahead, hit that button, and I hope to see you in the community. Welcome to Pain, Passion, and Purpose. I'm your host, Shakita Torres, where we share mental health education, biblical teachings, and ways to grow spiritually and build a stronger relationship with God so you can walk boldly in your God-given purpose. This podcast is sponsored by Empowered Purpose Academy, a certified online Christian school where we provide certification for Christian life coaches, mentorship for aspiring and existing Christian therapists, and mentorship for Christian women and men who desire to grow spiritually and discover their purpose. If you like today's episode, please subscribe and leave a raving review. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Pain, Passion, and Purpose. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Today I have a very special guest, my sister April Moore. Welcome, April. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So what I want to do, I want to go ahead and introduce to everybody who you are and all the great things that you are doing for God's kingdom. So April Moore and her husband, Morris Moore, are the founders and senior leaders of Kingdom Enlightenment Ministries. Together, they are dedicated to training believers, marketplace leaders, entrepreneurs, prophetic leaders, and families by creating and implementing equipping strategies. April is also the CEO of Grow with April, where she teaches people how to grow their own food, no matter their space. She also helps to build garden communities. Currently, they have partnered with Apostle Jennifer LeClaire and Awakening Prayer Hubs to launch a regional prayer hub. April flows heavily in equipping and activating believers in various forms of life, ministry, and prophetic training. She is the author of Gifts and Callings, having trained and activated many believers in their spiritual giftings. Wow, what a mouthful. So welcome, April. Again, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to hear more about your story and more about your journey and your walk with God, from pain to purpose. You guys, first of all, I want to say this. So I met April in April at Apostle LeClaire's Elijah Company Prophetic Conference. And it was amazing. And when I first saw April, I said, oh my gosh, she is so beautiful. And look at all that hair. It was just so thick and curly, and it's like gray and black, but it fit you so perfectly. I thought it was just gorgeous. And you were just beautiful from inside and out.
Thank you.
We all had a great time together at the conference. It was just amazing. The first question I wanted to ask you is to share a particular area of your life that has changed you forever.
Oh, Jesus. I think there are so many, but I would have to say when I was called into prophetic ministry. So I used to drive in my little white Honda Civic. I was about 22 years old, I think. And 22, 23, something like that. And I was newly rededicated to the Lord. Like I really sold that and was giving my life to the Lord. And what hadn't even been a year um, in my walk. And I'm in the car worshiping, talking to the Lord. And he called me a prophet and he called me a teacher. And I was like, yes, Lord, I teach, the kids. And at first he said a teacher. I was like, yeah, I teach the kids. He's like, no, you are a teacher. I had no clue what fivefold was at the time. I didn't know, but he was calling me. And many times God will call us early, way before we're ready. We're still wet behind the ears. We're still green. We're not ready. But he lets us know, hey, we're about to embark on this journey. And so when he called me a prophet, I was like, oh, okay. And I was excited about all that for about a day. And then I started thinking, I was like, wait a minute. Didn't they and at the time I really didn't know the word that well. I was like, didn't they kill all the prophets, or didn't they want to kill them and didn't like them? Everyone, a lot of times, yeah, that's true. But it's like, yeah, I like to be liked. I want people to like me. I don't think people like them. And so at the time, I had never even personally seen or witnessed prophetic ministry. I had never even met a prophet. If I had, I didn't know that I had. And all I knew is that I had a Baptist family on one side, Church of Christ on the other, where they only, not Church of God in Christ, but Church of Christ, where they don't even they sing without music. And it's very different. There's no women behind the pulpit at the time. You really didn't see things like that. And I was like, they don't want to put me in a straitjacket. They're gonna think I'm crazy. So to this day, I really haven't said much to them about all of that. But for many years, there was no one that I could turn to for mentorship. And in fact, I went to my then pastor at the time, and because I saw him embrace a young man who was called into ministry. And when I went to him, it was like blank. And afterwards, he just showed a lot of contempt toward me. And he would just kind of, when you're shaking people's hands when they're walking by at the end of service, he just would grab my hand and just kind of move me along, would barely talk to me after that. It was just like, he just didn't know what to do with me. The rejection was crazy. And all the people were so sweet and loving. I love the people. But I remember one Sunday singing, and I'm singing my heart out. They love to hear me sing. So they had like 3 choirs and I was in all of them, little church. And I'm singing and he's just staring at me with so much contempt. And I'm like, this man really hates me and I don't hate him. But I don't know why. I wanted to drop the mic and just run off the stage. And I think he just didn't know what to do with me. And so, and I was just there like everybody else. But, when there's something different about you, it can make people feel very, very uncomfortable. And so, of course, forgave him. And saw him years later, and he was, awesome toward me. He was really sweet. Life happened and all that good stuff. But at that point, it was very difficult. And that was in the late 90s. And there's so many more women now and so much more support now, but there really wasn't all of that then. And so during the years, the Lord trained and developed me. I was really unseen for about 20 years. I was just like, kind of like they say, on the backside of the mountain. And during that time, life happened. God trained me himself. And there really weren't really a lot of people. I stayed in my word. I listened to the leading of the Lord, and I learned as he trained and developed me, and he kept me hidden. And so he would even have me going to the Christian bookstore, and I just had this anointing where I could just kind of put my hands across the bookshelf, and he would just say, "Get this book, get that book," you know. It's just letting me know. And I would look at it and say, "Oh wow, this is a good book, Lord." And he was just training me on Discernment by Robert Laridan, The Prophetic Ministry by Bill Heyman. He has a trilogy book. And I remember hearing Apostle Jennifer talk about that. That's her spiritual father. And I was like, God was training me in that book too, those books too, because there wasn't a whole lot back then that we could really glean from in the late 90s. Like there is now, like every other week, there's a book on the prophetic coming out. But you didn't have that. And so later on, back like around 2001, not necessarily a prophetic ministry that I had training on, but there was ministerial training. So there was a church, that really accepted female ministers, and they had training. And I am a big proponent of training and development and all that. And so I went to that church, and that's when the Lord placed Kingdom Enlightenment Ministries in me, which, that was over 20 years ago now, but he gave me that ministry. He gave me the name, he gave me the purpose. And he said, I want you to teach people about the kingdom. And I knew it was something different than what we were learning, but I didn't know what he meant. So he took me on a journey to literally show me the kingdom. And so he's like, I want you to enlighten them to the kingdom. He gave me the scriptures based on Ephesians 1:17 through 20, 22, 23. And he said, I want you to teach them the kingdom, enlighten them. And so that's where that came from. It's a little bit of the first part of the journey.
Listen, your story and your journey, oh my gosh, like I can relate to it in many ways. I remember whenever I was first a baby in Christ, like my dreams just took off. I was dreaming like so much every night, and I had no idea how to really interpret it. And so I went to my pastor, my leader, saying, "Hey, I'm having all these dreams all the time. I'm always like, I feel fire all the time in my body. I know it's from the Lord, but what do I do with it?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. And so even with the seer realm, understanding that in dreams and visions, people didn't understand that either. And it wasn't until years later when I began to see books out about it. And I was so excited because I was like, oh my God, finally, I can really get some training and understanding of how to interpret what I see. And so, man, that is amazing. I love how you said that God trains you himself.
Yeah.
And when it comes to hearing God's voice and building a relationship with him, that's what it takes. Because we can't, lean on man. Of course, God uses people to mentor us and to impart into us. That's not what I'm saying. But ultimately, your foundation is with him.
It is. That relationship's got to be solid. Yeah.
Exactly. And also what I hear is that you experience a lot of rejection and a lot of feeling overlooked. Over the years, I've counseled so many women who say they feel overlooked, especially when it comes to the things of God. And so last year, the Lord had gave me this teaching to teach on Instagram, but I never did get to it. Lord, I'm sorry. I'm gonna do it. So today, before we got on the podcast, he reminded me of that teaching. I was like, God, okay, what do you want me to talk about today with her? And overlook my mind began to think about that particular teaching. I think that is very true. We often feel overlooked. We feel feel rejected, which causes us to abandon our journey to our purpose. And so you did not do that. So what were some things that you overcame in order to say, okay, God, even though I feel this way, I'm going to continue to push forth because you've called me to this?
Well, one major part is just believing that you are who he says that you are, and believing that you are called. Especially when there's no confirmation around, there's nobody confirm it. And at that point, it really isn't that important. that is confirmed by others. You have to have that solid grid with him. There is a little bit of danger in it because sometimes people don't really truly know, they're not really hearing correctly, and they'll assume that they are a prophet because they can see in the spirit, or they'll assume that, I hear God, I must see a prophet. Well, no, every believer can see in the spirit or hear from the Lord potentially. It's a gift, but actually being called is a different thing. And that's a whole other, teaching in and of itself. So there is a little bit there where it's like, well, you could be in error and things like that. But God literally will just work it all out. If you just stay in process, whatever your process is, he will work it out. There are many people that mistakenly feel as though they're a prophet when they're really like a really strong prophetic intercessor. There's all sorts of things like that. But the basic thing I would say in overcoming just the rejection and being and feeling overlooked and all that is literally finding your basis in the Lord, being secure in who he is to you, you being secure in who you are to him, and believing the things that he says, and know that if you are incorrect, he will work it out. So there's a friend of mine, there's a woman that I just met, I should say, that we're just getting to know each other. And she has seen like the current state of the economy and just some different things that the Lord started showing her 6 years ago that people need to prepare. And she's like, nobody's listening to me. They thought I was crazy and all of that. And now a lot of the major prophetic voices are starting to talk about it. Well, she was, seeing some things before the time for most people that God was releasing most people to release it. It's not that no one saw. I'm sure many of them did. It's just that they weren't. It wasn't time to release it yet. There were other things that were going on that they were dealing with, and all that. And I understand what that's like too. So it was very frustrating for her. And she and I were talking about that. And I was talking to her about the agricultural issues, famine, the supply chain issues, all sorts of things that we were talking about. And she could really relate with feeling that people were not listening. People, and especially with prophetic people, many times you'll go through seasons where it's like it doesn't feel like they're listening. But that's not an excuse to not speak, and that is not what God told you to do. Like, that's not the end result for you, is to be obedient and to do what he said and to speak what he said when he said it to whom he said it to. Jeremiah is an amazing example, just walking through that whole book and how he did all of those things. There are things that God spoke to him that he didn't say to the people. There are things that God said to him. And he said, well, God said this to him, but he said, but I want you to tell them this. You see what I'm saying? Like, so he had to be obedient and speak what God said to whom he said when he said it. And so, as she and I were talking about it, we were talking about the current state of things, and how, you know, like the Lord spoke to me. He said, that there's issues with agriculture, there's issues with decentralization of systems that we're seeing, and that people need to prepare and get ready and start learning how to grow their own food. That's not saying that you have to know how to fully stock out your whole house now, but you do need to learn how to grow, because that's a big learning curve. Many people do other things, they don't grow. I love to grow, I love to garden, I could do that all the time, but that's not everybody's calling. But there needs to be something, there needs to be, at some point, there may be, neighborhoods that are growing food for their neighborhood. There may be um, a lot of different things. It might even be that our children will definitely need to learn how to do some of these things. So it needs to come back into the way that we operate as communities and as a nation. People need to learn how to start bringing that agriculture back into their homes and in their lives, and learning how to stock up. Stocking up was something that was lost in the last couple of generations. um, People always stocked up for winter, for famines, for all sorts of things. It's unheard of, but in the last couple of generations, we're the ones that run to the grocery store when there's a hurricane. When there's job loss, we don't have food. But had we been stocking up when there was plenty and putting things aside and not wasting our food, maybe you have a bunch of apples and it's like, oh man, I need to eat them. I'm not going to eat them all. Dehydrate them instead of wasting them and throwing them out. There's different things. There's a different mindset I feel like God wants to shift us into. And so as a prophet, I was getting some of these things, and it's like, well, God, I don't know if anybody's going to listen to me. But he was like, hey, but there's a business that I want you to birth. Anytime I have a business, there's because there's something God is speaking to me, and there's an answer for it.
Yeah.
Anytime I launch something, it's because this is an answer for something that's needed. And so, yeah, I don't feel even now there are people that are listening that may say, I don't think that everything's going to break down that bad. Listen, we don't really know. All I can tell you is that things are breaking down. It started, but famine looks very different than it did before. It's like, oh, well, there's going to be droughts, no rain, and people can't grow. And it's more like now it costs too much for some farmers to grow. And that did happen this year, where some of them could not put seed in the ground. They couldn't grow anything because it cost too much, or they couldn't grow very much. Or they had to shift the crops that people weren't using or whatever. But famine also looks like, hey, there's a bacterial breakout in this formula factory, and then our nation has a hard time feeding their infants. So famine looks very different. I did a little Instagram about that. Famine looks very different now than it did in times past. So all kinds of strange things are happening in the earth, and we need to get ready. And God is so gracious. He's letting us know ahead of time to get ready and to get prepared. And it could be overwhelming, but if you just start, okay, I'm going to make sure I have 3 days worth of food. I'm going to make sure I have 3 weeks worth of food. Just start somewhere. Start learning how to grow simple things. There's so many easy ways to grow now, even inside of your house. I have potentially over 80 something plants that I can grow in my house, inside my house, because of all the units that I have here. But yeah, and even if no one listens,
Yeah.
I just have to be obedient and
Yeah.
just do what he said to do, regardless.
Yes. How about a couple of months ago, if that it hasn't been that long, actually, I did an Instagram video about stocking up. And people were like, thank you so much for reminding me. So you
Yeah,
God is speaking. It's just that I think so many of us are becoming like complacent and comfortable because we see
yeah,
it. But as you know, when stuff starts getting scarce, people begin to panic. And
yeah,
that's all this chaos and oh gosh, people go buy the whole store.
yeah. And you don't even have to fear. You don't have to fear because he's letting us know ahead of time. So
Mhm.
there's no need to fear. He's letting us know so that we won't be in that situation. And I went on, there's a website called webrestaurant.com, and there's plenty of bulk items there, pretty reasonably priced. Between that, Sam's, Costco, even a little bit of stuff on Amazon. I just shopped around to see where I was getting the prices on best prices on honey, was the best prices on flowers. I just wanted to do that so I could figure it out and then vacuum seal or protect whatever I need to protect, and getting the oxygen absorbers and all. Like I have a whole assembly over there.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love it. Wow. And so speaking of that, you were saying earlier about, your new ministry you had. Well, it's not new, but it's a branch of your ministry called Grow with April. And so I know you have a Facebook group. I know that
Yeah.
have started, teaching people how to garden in their home, how to garden outside. I think that's amazing. And so tell us more about that and how that came about.
Yeah, so Grow with April came from this prophetic word where God started to show me that, well, actually, it started before the prophetic word. About 6 years ago, my daughter was like 2 years old, and he said, yeah, I want you to, start a garden. I was like, I kill everything. He's like, I have a brown thumb, not just because I'm a black lady, but I have a brown thumb because I kill stuff. I'll forget it's over there. I'll forget to water. He's like, start a garden. So I did, and it was exciting. And I'm like, okay, God. And I just started. And after the spring was over, and it just I got a little harvest and just kind of let it die. And my husband, he already told me before, he said, you're not putting anything in the ground. You're gonna have to figure out something else. I was like, yes, sir, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I might. And he's right. I did. I just kind of let it just go. I didn't know what to do with all this stuff after it. I was like, well, God told me to start a garden, so I did it. And so I, did pretty good. And that was it. And nothing after that. And then he started giving me prophetic words. about the garden. Because a friend of mine even said that, like, hey, God didn't just have you do that for nothing. Why did you do it? And so I asked the Lord, why did I do that? And so he gave me some prophetic words. There's some things he was training me on as a leader. And so he was teaching me about the different things that happened. 2 years later, which was I guess in 2000, I guess 2020, no, 2018. Sorry, where are my numbers? 2018. So it's 2016, then 2018. He said, hey, do the garden again. I'm like, oh, okay. But this time I did do the garden. And of course, I did everything in containers because my husband said, don't put anything in the ground. So I did. And I got containers and I was like, okay, well, I feel led to get trees this time. So I got 5 trees. I got a Meyer lemon, 2 Cara orange trees. Cara oranges are so good. And I got 2 persimmon trees because I'd never eaten a persimmon. So I wanted to try it. And so I'm going to grow them. I'm going to grow them. And in North Carolina, y'all have those trees and stuff. My husband grew up on that, and I had never tasted one. I just heard of it. For me, it was just a color, the persimmon color or something. So it was like a red kind of color. So I'm like, I don't know. And so I grew it, and I had a little bit, and different things happened to the different trees, and God was showing me different things through that. And then when 2018 was over, again, everything just died and we got rid of all that stuff. And I kind of wish we had kept it. He's like, it's just, it's kind of junky back here. I was like, by the next year, I was like, yeah, just get rid of it. 2019, just get rid of it. So 2020 hits, and the Lord said, start your garden, but it was indoor. And so he said, I got into hydroponics and I just started learning how to grow indoors. I did that, and I didn't have a really good system. And so just kind of, whatever, I did it. If you had some lettuce and different things, and I was done. But then in 2021, the Lord said, start a garden, like a real garden. And I just had this feeling in my gut, like we did some big above ground. We created our own. I was trying to find inexpensive ways of doing that, above ground beds. Like I knew that I was going to be a gardener at this point because I'd already done all this research and learned so much. It was resonating in me. And I would say something out of my mouth and didn't even know I was saying it. I said, there's going to come a time when people are going to have to grow their own food. I would just feel it. I just knew it. And I would just feel, we need to learn how to do this. And so, of course, we learned how to cage it and all that because the squirrels are disrespectful and they'll come and eat all your stuff. Squirrels and birds, they want it too. They're hungry too. So they're like, so my husband built the cages and we, did all that. And so I kept it going. I didn't do a lot in the fall, but I didn't just abandon it. I was kind of learning and testing the ground. And so as this in May, so I started the garden in March, and I just knew that people are going to need to learn how to grow their own food. And in May, the Lord started dropping all this revelation to me. It was overwhelming. And it's not that that hadn't happened before. It's happened many times, but it's been a while. And it was a major what he dropped in my spirit. And I knew that I was going to be gardening. Like, that's just what I'm doing. But, and I'm not giving that up anymore. It was a part of me at that point, and I knew it was important. And I started seeing us, having land. And I said, are we going to be farmers, like actual real life farmers? That's crazy, but I want it. I want an orchard. I want this. I want that, Lord, and the Lord just took it from there because there's other things that we're wanting to do. We have a branch of our ministry called the Joseph Centers. And we also have another branch of our ministry called the Wealth Transfer. So the Joseph Centers is geared toward, we know that things are happening and we want to start stocking up. We want to start preserving food so that when things happen, there's food for people during massive amounts of shortages. So we're just getting started on that. That was a major turning point for us. And we need land. We need guys to give us land so we can grow these things and make sure that we have resources for people when things get harder and scarcer to get food. There's all sorts of hydroponic solutions. There's a lot of things that we could do. So it turned into it turned into just an act of obedience and a hobby, into God just really dropping something in me that had a lot more purpose, a lot more vision, And it's like, this is not just for you and your household. This is for the masses. Something is coming. How much it's going to be, how bad it's going to be, I don't know. We're always praying to lessen the things, either prevent or to lessen the impact. So I'm praying that it won't get crazy, right? I don't know if it'll take 10 years for it to get nuts. I don't really know. All I know is that we need to learn how to prepare and change our lifestyle of wastefulness, and we need to switch that over to preparing. People always prepare for the winter. Um, so it doesn't hurt if you stock up. What does it hurt you if you stock up? It doesn't do anything to you. If there's job loss in your house, you always have food. You're in better position. If there's a hurricane, you're not running to the store and buying up all the water because you've already learned how to store water. And actually, there's some other solutions to water storage that we have. I have the containers over there. I'm looking at them. So there's all sorts of different things that you can do. It doesn't hurt to prepare, because people always prepare for the winter. They always prepare for times of famine. That was a natural part of what people did for hundreds of years. It's just in the last couple of generations where we have relied on systems that are now breaking. And God never meant for us to be totally dependent on these world systems. There's a lot of systems that are beginning to break down. So it's just smart to prepare. It's just smart to learn how to grow your own food, because even, for instance, just looking at, and this is the last thing I'll say, but just looking at celery. If you look at regular celery, the amount of pesticides in it is unreal. And we were juicing it at one point. I'm like, so we were juicing it every day. And I'm like, we're juicing water and pesticides. I mean, that's and that we're getting nutrients, but we're also getting a lot of pesticides, because it has a lot. Organic doesn't have as much, but it still has it. And it's like, then they're talking about listeria and they're recalling lettuce. I was growing lettuce when that was happening. I never have to worry about, there's lettuce, like I'm looking at that also. It's right here inside my house year round, because lettuce is a cool crop. It doesn't like this heat. It would never survive outside, but inside I can grow lettuce year round. I can grow spinach, and I can grow strawberries if I want. I was at one point, tomatoes. There's the beans. I can grow different things inside my house all the time, whenever I want, or outside. I have both. I even have trees. I got banana trees outside. You can grow your own bananas. There's different things that we have going on. So we always, we'll have, and if we have too many bananas, then we have a dehydrator. We'll dehydrate some of those bananas and eat them later, or freeze them, and so we can make smoothies. So there's a lot of things we're learning how to do so we can prepare. They're talking about rolling blackouts and things like that. Well, you can even get an outdoor stove, a wood burning stove, where you don't have to depend on the electricity should anything go down. There's just different things that we're kind of getting in our minds, like, what if this happens? What if that happens? So we're slowly just stocking up and preparing for those things, and getting ready for it. Like, what do people do when they go camping? Well, then let's get that type of gear, so that if anything ever happens, we can shelter in our home and be okay. It's only smart to prepare. There's all sorts of things that are going on right now. So even if nothing happens in your neck of the woods, it never hurt anything. Didn't hurt anything. And all you did was do something wise and prepare your household for whatever may happen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, because I remember my daughter was she told me two different times. First time we was doing a study, we were doing something together. Said, "Mommy, the Lord told me to tell you to stock up, continue to stock up." We have a shed out here in the back. The only thing about it is it does get a little hot back there in the summertime, but it is like it is shaded because it has a cover, of course. She said, "Mommy, because there's going to be people who are not going to stock up." And so because of that, we still want to be able to help other people who may have not gotten the memo, or have not taken the warning seriously.
Wow. Little baby prophets are also talking about it.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yes, honey. So many stories with that. So many stories with that. And so yes, and so what I hear you saying too, when it comes to purpose, when it comes to passion, is that seasons change.
oftentimes we look at purpose, it's like this one be all, fix all thing that God is calling us to do. It's one thing we have to do, and that's my purpose. And that's not true. We're
I'm
all,
living proof of that. I have so many things. I'm
yes,
training people prophetically. We're
yes,
training people in
yes.
the field of entrepreneurship. That's where the wealth transfer comes in. We're training people with growing food. There's a lot.
Mhm.
Multifaceted people.
Right. And it's not happening all at once. Now it will,
Yeah.
now, as you grow, things are happening, simultaneously. But in the beginning, as God began to like equip you and groom you and you grow up and you mature, He'll continue to add things to you. But it's not just one thing that we're called to do, but it's all going back to the Father, right?
Amen. Yes.
Yes, yes. And so in this season 2, the Lord gave me, a vision for this season, which is called Your Words Carry Weight, Speak Life. And I think it's so interesting that you're talking about your gardening and you're talking about that part of your ministry, right? So can you think of anything that intertwines with the theme for this season, Your Words Carry Weight, Speak Life, in reference to your gardening, in reference to, your ministry?
Yeah, there is for me, yeah. For me, I'm very careful about what I say when I see a plant struggling. Isn't that funny? I do. I'm very careful. Okay. Yeah, I'm very careful about what I say over a plant if I see it struggling. It's so funny that you should say that because with, like, for instance, I have a little zucchini plant and there were 12 seeds. The seeds are a little bit older. We were donated tons of seeds. And so I put 12 in there, only one of them surfaced. And it looked like it's struggling, but it's kind of curled up, but I saved it and it's coming. I know there's a prophetic word in there. I'm going to wait to see what it grows into. And I'm just fertilizing and watering it, all that kind of stuff. And it's growing slowly, but surely it's growing. But I'm very careful that I don't say, oh, that one's not doing too good. Like I don't speak that over my plants. There is a study, and if you go on YouTube, you can find this. I think IKEA also did the study, but it's a well-known study that people have done where they had two plants and they would speak one thing, positive, lovely, beautiful things to one plant, and the other one, they would speak all these negative things to. The other test was music. They had one that had peaceful, beautiful classical music. They had another one that was really harsh, crazy rock music. And that plant grew away from the speaker. And it looked kind of crazy too. But the one that was where the ones that were, and it also didn't grow very well, but the ones that were, they had the same light, same water, same nutrients, everything was the same. They were actually in the same area, but they were in this box where, things were happening. So the other one that either the ones that were spoken positively to, or because there's two different tests I'm talking about, or the one that had the beautiful music. I think what they did with that one is they had people record certain things, and so so both of them had speakers, if I'm not mistaken, but they recorded these things so that positive things or negative things were being spoken. And so one wasn't growing as much. The one that got all the positive, it was strong, it was beautiful. And it's the same thing with plants. That's why people say, talk to your plants. And so I'll say, you're doing great. You're doing great. You're going to grow. You're going to be so tasty. You're going to be awesome. So I actually will speak over my plants because I want to speak life to them. And if they're struggling, I don't speak death to them. Similarly, we do the same thing in our ministry. It's funny that you asked me that because we train prophetic people and many of them come to us broken. They come to us traumatized. Um, they think that they're crazy, but they're just gifted. I literally have a course where it's called the Intercessors Boot Camp. And the very first training in that boot camp is you're not crazy, you're just gifted, because so many people think that they are. And I'm like, you're not crazy, you just get that. I did that training about a year and a half, 2 years ago, something like that. 2 years ago now, I think. I can't remember. It was something like that. And so because there are a lot of people that feel that way. So when people come into our ministry, we've had some that were on drugs, that were mostly alcoholic. We had people that were adulterers, some that were fornicators, and they habitually always shacked up. They slept with some, I mean, they lived with someone that was their husband. That was just what they did. That's what their family did. And that's just how it was. They did that. And those are the ones that are some of the strongest fighters in our ministry. They are determined. One of them, they had tons of witchcraft in her family, and even was dating a witch, and and so many different things. So, just loving them and seeing who they are. So the gift of being a prophet, and just even being just a prophetic person, you don't have to be a prophet to see the beauty in people. And maybe they're not the ones that I'm going to entrust myself to. Maybe I'm not going to do all of that. However, I can love them, see the beauty, see, God, where are they going? Who are they? And speak that over them and call them up. So one of them that I did that with is one of our strongest warriors. She went from adultery, being an adulterer, I would say. She wasn't married. She was always the other, person. She had been married before, but in this case, she was always the other person. She went from being an alcoholic and being in adultery and all of those things, to being one of our smoking cigarettes or whatever, to being one of our strongest intercessors. She is very well grounded. You would meet her and never know. She is wise. She's, just such an amazing woman of God. And she's so full of God's light and power and passion. She stays on her face. She stays in the presence of the Lord. She loves the Lord. And I'm going to say her name, Vicky. I love me some Vicky. And so, because she's not ashamed of her testimony. So I will say, hey, I won't say your name. She's like, you can, because I overcame this. That's just who she is. She's like, I'm not ashamed of my testimony. I'll tell anybody. The fire of God is on her so strong because she knows who she is. She has been spoken well of. She has been called up. We speak well of them. We call them up higher, and they begin to become what God said they were. And there's some that may not stick around, and maybe they'll leave and they don't finish their process. It gets really difficult. The process is hard. And they're like, it's too much. I want to do it my own way. That's fine. Listen, you have something available to you that I didn't have. And so we give it our all to those who want what we have, because we know what it's like. We decided to become what we didn't have, to be a solution in the earth. And so if this is what you want, great. And if you don't, it's okay. Because I know it can be overwhelming. If they're not ready, then nobody's forcing. But those that are ready and they're saying, I want to change, I want my life to be transformed. I'm like, it's so funny. I always say, in about a year's time, you will see a different you. And so we'll walk with them, we pour into them, we love them, and we point them to the Lord, constantly pointing to the Lord. And we're nudging them along the way, we're guiding them, and they become what we speak, and they begin to transform their minds and believe that. And sometimes it takes a while, but we do see the transformation, just like these little plants. I speak to them. There's a couple of them I didn't think they were going to make it, but I kept speaking, and every last one of them made it. I was like, you're a great plant. You're strong. You're going to be. So yeah, you can. You're going to bring us some amazing food. I just can't wait to eat it. It's going to taste so good. And yeah, up there hanging with all the rest of the plants, looking just as strong and healthy as they are. But you really have to speak life into situations. If you keep saying this never works, you are right. You are absolutely right. Even us getting our home. At the time, it didn't look as though we could afford a house. I said the type of house we wanted. So I started decreeing this. I said, we are going to have a house that's worth this amount of money, but we're only going to spend this, which is almost half. Because I love the houses that look like that. And sure enough, we were at the time, it was in 2010, we're in a recession. And we ended up getting that house. We're living in it today. We've been living here for almost 12 years. So God is amazing. When you start to speak and declare things and you're agreeing with heaven, things move and they shift. We've been believing God for some things in our life even now. So we just keep speaking. God, we believe you are the God of breakthrough. We believe that we're going to see the things that you're saying. The things that you're showing us are so big and expensive that we have to believe you, because we can't believe nothing else. But we've got to believe everything that you said will come to pass, and we're standing and believing. And we're starting to see some incremental breaks. I'm like, good. That means you're hitting the sweet spot. You keep believing, you keep speaking, and you keep tapping in that same place. Eventually, the hardest brick will crack. You'll start chipping away until you see the light, until there's cracks in the dam and the whole thing overflows. You have to continue believing and speaking. You cannot look at circumstances and then start shifting and saying, oh, and start seeing and start speaking what you see. And if you have to go on a fast to get that out of your spirit, we have. There are times when, oh God, this looks really hard. I don't get it. And it was like, oh, it is hard, but it's really not for us to produce this. This is on you. So we need to go on a fast to get our minds right. We'll go on a fast in a minute, turn the plate over, whatever we got to do, because we want to be in alignment and speak what heaven is speaking, and not what we see. The earth will never let you be great. The earth will never bend. The earth will never bend to the will of God, but somebody has to. And it must be somebody has to bend to the will of God, and it must be his people. And we got to speak what he says, and we have to believe him so that things will shift. The earth will never give it up. We live in a fallen world. It'll never shift the way that you want to unless you speak it and believe it.
Yes, I love it. Listen,
I got excited.
yes, girl, it's okay. I love it. I love the passion. I love the fire. Okay. So tell us where we can find you at, as far as your Facebook group, your ministry, and all that good stuff.
Yes. Well, the first place you can go to is KE Ministries. That's K as in kingdom, E as enlightenment. Enlightenment starts with an E. Ministries.com. I believe if you go to .net and .org, you might find us there too. But go to .com. Get your name, get them in all. That's one of the business things. If you can, get them in the .com, the .net, and the .org if you can. But we have .com will definitely work. And so you can find us there. There's even a place on my page where I say you can schedule a consult or coaching, schedule coaching. You can do that. On Facebook, you can find me at Grow with April, or you can find me in April Moore. My handle on Facebook is 1 April Moore. So that'll help you to find us there. But if you Grow with April is not only my page, but it's also a group, Grow with April. So you can find us in those places. You can find me on Instagram, which is probably even more preferred to find me on Instagram. And it's Grow with April, and there's an underscore under each of the words. So grow _ with _ April, or again, 1 April Moore on Instagram. Those are 2 other places. A lot of places that you can find us. If you go to Instagram, basically, and you go to my bio, there's a link that'll pretty much get you to everything. So Instagram is a good place to start. And you can find everything. Even if you're on one page, you can find the other, and that has everything. So yeah, we're connected all over the place.
Exactly. I love it. So you guys, I'll make sure I'll put her information in the description box. Be sure to go follow her. Be sure to go learn some tips. If you need a coaching session to learn how to grow, if you need help with your spiritual growth, please reach out to her. She'll be more than happy to help you. And so, April, thank you so much for being a part of today's episode. And we will catch up, honey.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're so welcome.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Our prayer is that this podcast episode has blessed you. Don't forget to go and subscribe and leave us a raving review. If you would like to sow into this ministry or to this podcast, Pain, Passion, and Purpose, you can do so at Anchor FM /Pain, Passion, and Purpose, or Cash App $ Shakita Torres. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time.